Today we're going to talk about creating a sortie and completing a 104 in Wmirs. For our example today, we're going to use mission number 17T4071. Okay, to create an air sortie, you'll notice the air column. We're going to go down to the number next to the air column. We're going to click on that. That'll bring us to the screen that will allow us to add a sortie. So we're going to click on Add Sortie. And for the purposes of today's 24 February, we're going to utilize that date. I'm not going to change it. But if we were scheduling a sortie for another day, we would make sure that that date was reflective of the day we were using. Now, it's important to pick the correct type of sortie that you're going to be flying. For example, if you're flying from one airport to the mission base, say from Oxford to Hartford, and we'll use that as an initial example, we're going to be traveling to and / from mission base because we're not going to be actually doing a task during our flight. If we're going to be tasked with doing a flight, then we would select the appropriate task that we're doing. We may be doing SAR training, we may be doing the DF, ELT, we may be doing DR training, disaster release training. Okay, so it's important to pick the right one. So for the purposes of today, we're just going to do travel to or from. You got to put your departure airport. Okay, I'm going to put in Oxford, KOXC, and departure time. Now I have the time set at Eastern Standard Time. This is helpful for a lot of people who get confused by Zulu. One time of the year it's 5 hours difference, another time of the year it's 4 hours difference. So you can select this, and you can either have it on Eastern Standard Time, Central Standard Time, wherever you may be, or Zulu, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, so we're gonna leave it on that. We're gonna go back to the previous screen. Okay, we're gonna have to add our sortie in. Travel to and from, KOXC, and I'm going to leave this morning at 0800. That's what I'm estimating that I'm going to launch. My destination airport with KHFD, and it takes about 20-25 minutes to get over there. So I'm going to land about 8:30, give or take a few minutes. That just gives a rough estimation of my flight time. Tail number, I'm going to use November 771, Charlie Pop. Now you noticed I typed everything in. You've got to type the whole tail number in. If you don't type the whole tail number in, it will not pull this information up. And as you see, it auto-populated that it was a G1000, it's cap 609, 120 knots, okay, red, white, and blue, corporate aircraft, home base, right now it's saying home base is Meriden. Okay, but for this purposes, it's at Oxford, and it gives the equipment on board, so you don't have to type all of that in. The crew contact, I'm going to be the crew today, so I'm going to put myself, I'm going to put my phone number. Okay, I'm going to add the sortie. Once I add the sortie, you'll see a whole bunch of other information will pop up. The Hobbs and tack time, the actual time of departure, the actual time of arrival, which we'll get to later on. All right, and this information, which we'll talk about during our debrief. Our crew and passenger, for purposes, I'm going to be the mission pilot. Okay, and we're going to say Michael Kirk is going to fly with me, and he'll be my mission observer. Okay, we're going to update that. And as you now see, this information is here. Now, Wmirs is a little funny sometimes. It doesn't give you your brief and debrief right away. Sometimes you just have to go out of the sortie and back in, unfortunately. It's a bug in the system. Nothing that we can do about it. So I just went to sortie 38, and now I'm switching back to sortie 39. Okay? Now, as you see here, when I did that, we have all of this different information in here. Now, it's important for the pilot, before he leaves, he has to do a couple of things. He has to select his flight release officer. And for these purposes, I'm going to pick Lieutenant Colonel Roger Malaguti, and I'm going to hit submit. Okay, now Lieutenant Colonel, it says here, email sent to selected FRO. So Lieutenant Colonel Malaguti is going to get an email saying that I have requested him to release this flight for me. One of the things that we must do is our ORM, which is our Operational Risk Management Worksheet. Okay, now from that, you go to your different areas. You go to your pilot experience area, your crew solo, and you can just check these things off as you go. Cap flying experience, good health. It is crewed today because I got one other person with me. I'm going to probably do 3 or more sorties, and I'll probably be 2.5. They're going to be routine. It's not going to be over water. It's going to be over land. So NA with the immersion suits. And again, you go through this stuff, time of day, you go through all of this stuff and you check them off, and this will come up with your ORM. So VFR, it's a beautiful day out. Okay, surface winds, we'll say 5 to 10 knots. And I'm familiar with all the fields that I'm going to. So I'm going to hit submit. Okay, now my ORM is low risk, right? That'll tell the FRO that I'm okay to go. Now I'm going to brief my sortie. Clicking on my briefing button. Now it is important that every field is filled in. All right. Now this tracking number may be used by the mission base. It may be used by the IC. It may be used by the FRO to put information in. It may be used by yourself because you may have multiple sorties and you may want to utilize that. But that's a free-form field that you can use for everything. So our area operations, okay, for this particular example is going to be Central Connecticut. Okay, it's KLXE, KH80. Base telephone number, I'm just going to put Lieutenant Colonel Malaguti's phone number in. Base call sign is going to be Hartford Mission Base. Okay. Base frequency, we're going to reach them on Air 1. Air to ground frequency will also be Air 1. Air to air frequency will also be Air 1. Okay? That lets everybody know that's looking at this. If you're en route or you're flying, if I'm telling them that I'm listening on Air 1, they can reach me. Radio check-ins are going to be before takeoff and every 30 minutes after that. All right? Other aircraft in the area at this particular time, that's an NA. We're not going to be working with ground teams, so I'm going to be put NA. And my sortie objectives is to move personnel to mission base. My sortie deliverables is to move personnel to mission base. Actions to be taken, notify AOBD, okay, or Air Branch Director upon arrival. Route of flight is going to be direct. Now your route of flight, depending on the type of mission that you're flying, you're going to put the type of flight that you're going to be in. You may be doing a grid search, you may be doing a different type of search, but you'll put your route of flight. Altitude assignment restrictions. Depending on where you're flying, you may have some altitude assignments or restrictions. Typically, when you're traveling from one to the other, I usually put in as per ATC. Okay, airspeed expected, I'm going to put 120 knots. Aircraft separation and adjoining areas. NA, aircraft separation and adjoining areas is for when we're doing multiple searches in an area. You may be searching one grid, you may have an aircraft searching the grid right next to you. Therefore, you would put that information in there so you would know what aircraft is there so you guys can talk to each other. Alternate emergency fields, I'm going to say MMK for this particular one. Military low altitude training routes. We don't have this issue in Connecticut because there are none. Okay, New York, Massachusetts, they have low altitude training routes that they have to be worried about. Hazards to flight. I typically put in birds, towers, other aircraft, because those are typically hazards to flight. And they're asking us what the current weather is. I'm going to say VFR. Okay. Current en route weather, current area operation, meaning Hartford. VFR. What's the forecast, VFR. Okay, if the forecast is going to be coming down, we need to put that in. So that's important. Right here, we would check the flight plan required box if, per 60-1, if we were traveling more than 50 miles from our origination point. Okay, so we would check that off if we were traveling that. We're not, but then we would put what type of flight plan we're putting in there. This way, if for some reason the aircraft goes missing, the people, your FRO has a way to say, hey, you know what, let me call the FAA, they put a VFR flight plan, let me see what they filed. All right, and when you come back, you'll check off at the end of your day, flight plan opened. Now your ORM matrix complete, that automatically checks off because you completed it, and it puts the risk assessment in there. Now this risk assessment approved isn't for you. This is for the FRO to check off, or the AOBD to check off, saying, hey, I checked it, I agree with it, okay, we're going to let this guy go. So he would check that off, all right? And now our sortie is briefed. You can now go fly your sortie. Once you fly your sortie, you're going to go into your debrief section. Now this is very, very important that this is completed in a timely manner. In Connecticut, we have a rule that it should be completed within 24 hours, even though the regulation says 72 hours you haven't to complete it. But we really need you to complete it within 24 hours for reimbursement purposes and being able to process everything in a timely manner. When you come into the debrief section after your flight is complete, you have all your numbers, you have your hobs, your TAC, okay, if you got fuel, if you, you know, what time you took off, what time you landed, all of this information is here. So if you file the flight plan, you want to check off flight plan close. It's kind of a reminder that, hey, you know what, did you close your flight plan or not? If you didn't, you really should get on the phone and do that if they haven't already been chasing you down. So in this particular case, we didn't file a flight plan, so we're not going to check that off. Okay, and we were running a little bit late, so we actually got off the ground and we had wheels up at about 8:03. You know, but we had a nice tailwind, so it took us a lot less time than we expected, and we landed about 8:24. All right, so this is one of the reasons why we take wheels up and wheels down time, because we need to put that information in there. And for these purposes, I'm going to say our Hobbs times was 1250.6, and you know, ending hot times was 1250.6, and I'm going to say it's 1250.2. So we did 0.4 thereabouts on the aircraft. My TAC time, I'm going to say 21:15.1, 0.3, 21:15.0. Okay. Now, Hobbs to and from time. What that means is, if you're working a grid or you're doing a search, an ELT search or anything, how long did it take you to get from where you launched to where you began your search? Okay, so in this particular case, our to and from time is going to be 0.4 because there was no search involved and we didn't stay in an area, we went direct. All right, now fuel. This is very, very important. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull up a fuel receipt. And as you see on this fuel receipt here, it's a little, let's bring it in a little bit. All right, it is important that all of this information be on the fuel receipt. Okay, where did we buy the fuel? At this particular fuel receipt, I bought this fuel at Islip. Okay, I bought Avgas. It was for aircraft 715 Charlie Pop, 30 gallons of fuel. Here's the price for the fuel. Okay, we get a discount. Here is our net price for the fuel that we paid for, and here's our total price for the fuel. Now, some of the things that we are required to put on this invoice, so we're able to better track it within the system. Now, these aren't our rules, these are national rules. You put your name and your cap ID. You put the associated mission number that this fuel receipt is tied to. The associated sorties, in this particular case it was 4071, and I flew sortie 22 and 30, okay, and my Hobbs time was 2.1, and I didn't put my TAC time on there, shame on me. But my tack time should have been on there also, is the total tack time. Not beginning and ending, but just total. And the reason why that is done is because they're going to say, hey, you know what, you used 30 gallons, you flew 2.1 hours, does that make sense for that aircraft? In this particular case, it's about 14 and a half gallons per hour. It's a little high for a 182, but it's in the acceptable range to do that, okay? So what we would do then is we would go back, and I'm going to take this off the screen. We would go back here and we would say, okay, we got 30 gallons of fuel. All right, we didn't put any oil in. Our fuel and oil cost was $161.47. Our receipt number, ISP-17-58918. Okay. Now, who paid for this? Well, I used the national for this thing. If we use the AV cards that we have in our aircraft, we would check off wing paid. And when we check off wing paid, you'll see it says reimbursed to Connecticut. Now, that means that National is now going to take that money that they get from the Air Force and they're going to give it to us because we have to pay the bill. Now, if National just came out with these shell cards, these national shell cards, which are going to be distributed in the aircraft very shortly, if we utilize that card, we would check off NHQ shell card paid. You'll notice that it immediately goes to NHQ credit. They will take care of everything at this point. For this particular invoice that I put up, okay, I used the shell card because the invoice that the aircraft that I was using had a shell card in it, so I utilized that. Now you need to put your receipt and attach your receipt, okay, to this. And I'm going to go into my Civil Air Patrol folder and my fuel receipts, okay, and I'm going to pick this, and it's going to attach itself, all right. And then I would hit update at this point, and all this information would update. But I'm not going to do that today because, okay, and it hasn't been updated yet, so I'm going to pull all of this information out in a minute. But I would hit update. I might as well do it. And you'll notice now that there is a link for this fuel receipt. It's in here. But I have to put my summary information in. Now my summary information is, okay, well, what happened? Okay, you know, we launched from OXC, flew direct to HFD without incident. All right, arrived safely per IC's instructions. Okay, the weather was VFR. And I can put any other weather conditions in there. I know a lot of guys will take the weather right off, cut and paste it, put it in there. And then if you have any other remarks as to effectiveness with the sortie or something went wrong or anything like that, or if there's a problem with the aircraft, you can put that in here. Sortie effectiveness. They won't close this out unless you do it. It was successful, marginal, unsuccessful, not flown, required. Okay, so for today's purpose, I'm just going to put not flown because I'm going to cancel this anyway. Now, our debriefing officer, you can't be your own debriefing officer. You have to talk to somebody. Typically, it would be, if you're flying, it would be your AOBD, if you're flying in a mission, your IC possibly, or your FRO. Okay, so I'm going to just put 464388, that's Major, Lieutenant Colonel Maladuti. And he debriefed me at this particular time, I'm going to say 1800, on this particular date. And then I would hit update. And that's complete. Now your sortie is complete. When you go to look at your 104, you'll see 104 just like we used to have on paper. All the information now is in here. All right? And as you see here, it's all filled in. The briefing information, they took that field out. I don't know why, but it used to be on the briefing, used to say who your briefing officer was. Okay, but as you see here, everything that I put in there is now on a 104. Now you got to remember, we're not the only ones looking at this. You got people at National, you got Cap USAF. Cap USAF reviews all of these. If there are issues with it, I do get phone calls from Cap USAF. asking us what happened, what's the deal with this thing, and so on and so forth. So that is creating a 104. Thank you.